What's going on, guys? You know what this is? This is going to be setting up that rear end like you guys asked for. Alright guys, we're going to go over getting the rear end centered in the car. You tore everything apart, you got to put it all back, and it's not going to be straight. Unless you have non-adjustable arms, then it's going to be wherever it lands. So I have all adjustable, double adjustable spherical bearings on each end. I did my best at measuring the factory ones and transferring it over to this. I have the measurements written down. So we're going to go over how I centered this in the car. And we'll talk about things like pinion angle, anti-squat, instant center, height and length, and we'll go over those things. Sorry, the lighting's not as great back here. I haven't made it down the whole garage with LEDs yet. At $90 a pop, they get kind of expensive. So let's go ahead. I gotta pop the wheels off. We'll go over some tools you'll need for this. Very basic, minor stuff. You don't need much. And we'll start there.
Let's go.
You got to do a couple of things, and one of the things you got to do when you go to do this, you got to measure front to back, and you got to measure side to side. Side to side is the easy one. Front to back's a little bit more difficult. So I'm pretty sure I showed you guys how to do side to side. I'm gonna redo my side to side now that this thing's been on the ground, it's been settled, it's been rolled around and everything. I'm gonna make sure it's straight. A lot of these times with these cars from the factory, they came like a 1/4 inch off. That's just how Foxbodies were. So we'll do side to side, front to back. Front to back, it's a little bit more difficult because when you do front to back, you have to pick a point up further the front of the car, measure down from like a lower control arm bolt, front to back, make sure each side, and then crisscross and make sure it's centered that way. Now, let me rethink. This was all fresh in my head like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So you can use your control arms, your lower control arms, to set your front to back and your uppers left to right. I'm sure. It's really vague in my head right now. I'm sorry. I'm going to double check that right now actually. So, I've talked about this a couple of times. You gotta have a plumb bob. Like I said previously, Harbor Freight, it's like $6. Lowe's, Home Depot, hardware store. anywhere you can pretty much get a plumb bob. You should always have 1, 2, or 3 of these in your toolbox. Masking tape, a good Sharpie, and a cheap tape measure. So what you want to do is you want to find 4 points on the car, 1 on each side. If your rocker sills, jack plates are in good shape, you will have a notch, 4 notches right here. You see it? It's where the factory used to line these cars up on a jig. So I just went off the front of the notch down to my piece of masking tape. I drew an X on it. Very simple, right? Drew an X on it, did it in the front, did it on the other side, did it in the front. And then what I did was I did the same thing down from the lower control arm bolts. Now when you do it off bolts, make sure on both sides you go off one way or the other, because it can be a 1/4 inch difference in length if you go off this way and then the other side you go off that way. So make sure it's both sides. And what you want to do is you want to take your 4 measurements on the ground, you want to cross section measure, and it'll find your center. And then that will find you the center of the body. And when you have the center of the body, you can measure out to those control arm bolt X's. See where I'm going with this? Measure out to the left, measure out to the right. If the numbers are the same, beautiful. We're in square in the car. If they're not the same, you know, you got to suck one lower in, push one lower out. But you do that simultaneously. You don't just do twist on one control arm and not the other. You got to go, you know, it's give and take. So you got to go a half a turn on one and a half a turn the other way on the other one. Half a turn in, half a turn out. And an easy way to do that is to take your Sharpie and just draw a little line on, you know, your control arm here, and you can see a half a turn, 1/4 turn, full turn. That's the easiest way. Or if you don't want to draw on your nice parts like I don't, I would put a piece of masking tape on there and just do that. So I'm going to measure right now and get the center of the car. This is a little bit easier with 2 people, but alright, just like that. I was actually a little off on the rear end. I might have, you know, now that it's settled, I didn't really tighten down any of my jam nuts on the lowers last time, so it might have moved a touch, but I ended up with just about 54.5. You know, 54 and 3/8, 5/8. So, you know, it's right there. But I'm within a 1/16 on both sides. So that works out well. So now your rear end is square in the body. Great. Cool. That, you know, it's fairly simple to do that. Now the next thing, it's kind of more of a pain in the ass, is to center it back and forth, left to right. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to peel up all this tape off the ground that I just put down that I don't need anymore. And I'm going to snug down my lower control arm lock nuts so that doesn't move again on me. And we'll start working on left to right. Now you guys remember how to measure this, because we did this during the shock mounting video, I think, because we had to make sure the rear was centered in the bay then before we welded the shock brackets on. So I'm going to set that up now. Also note, make sure you put, make sure your rotor is flat against the axle hub. It's not sticking off at all. Now, I like to measure it. I'll show you guys here. measure it, right? So we're at 6 and I can't really see. We'll pretty much say 6 3/4. I like to write that measurement down right here. So when I go to that side now and I do this, I don't forget. The telltale tape tells me I'm off almost a 1/4 inch that way. Now, where it gets tricky is, and there's a lot of trains of thought, is because the upper control arms affect your pinion angle. So you got to do your pinion angle first. That's something you got to set on your own. It depends on suspension setup, suspension bushings, and then that's something you're going to end up playing with later on down the road anyway. I have all spherical bearings everywhere, so they set up about 1 degree down, somewhere give or take in there. I've actually honestly never measured mine. I'm probably going to just measure it right now, see how close we are, and then set your pinion angle, and then you want to rotate your bars evenly. So your pinion angle stays the same, but you try to push this thing over 1/8 of an inch. So if we go 1/8 of an inch that way, it'll be centered, we'll cut that 1/4 inch in half. So it'll be, 6 7/8 and 6 7/8. So let's figure that out now. Got my little angle finder here. I've been meaning to get a digital one forever. I just completely forget all the time, literally. So we're like 1.5 degrees. Okay, my pinion angle's pretty much set. It's around 1.5 degrees down, -1.5 degrees. So that's perfect starting point. I don't even want to touch that. But we still need to get this rear end to go that way 1/8 of an inch. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin these control arms one at a time with the equal amount of time. Alright? So you want to move both the same amount. So you try not to mess up your pinion angle really all that much. I gotta find my pen again so I can mark my control arms. My up. Now I went 1 flat, not knowing how much a flat would change it. Remember, we only need it to go like 1/8. 1/8 will be fine. Bang! It moved. Who would have thought? Well, who would have thought moving the suspension like that would get it to move? So anyway, now your rear end centered left to right. It might be a touch C hair off here or there, but I mean it's not a pro mod going 360s. So, if it's off a 16th, it's not going to be all that huge for you. Now, that's only part of the battle. The rest of the battle is your anti-squat and your instant center. Now, the problem with doing those things is you really need the vehicle at ride height, preferably like a 4-post lift, something of that nature. Obviously, I don't have a 4-post lift. I'm going to wait to set my anti-squat and my instant center up until I can get it on my buddy's 4-post. He will scale the car for me, and then we'll adjust more of the suspension there. Now, your instant center is dictated by your control arms. So if you were to take your control arms, right, you got your upper and you got your lower, and you were to draw an imaginary line down the side of the car, where those two lines intersect is your instant center. Now, a big problem is people who lower the car too low have the control arms, the lower control arms dipping down in the front. That's bad. And if you have the other ones going up, you're never going to have an instant center. It's going to be infinity. It'll never happen. It's another reason why we got those lower brackets on there. Help with the instant center. Now, radial car, slick car. Completely opposite things. On a radial car, you want a longer instant center and a lower anti-squat. Anti-squat's done in percentage. So you want like 100% or below anti-squat on a radial car. On a slick car, you want to send that up through the loop. So your anti-squat percentage is how much does that send squatting down. On a radial car, you don't want any squat. You want that rear end to separate. So if you can get that thing 90%, 80% anti-squat, you're going to do great with a radial. Slick car, 160, 170, 180%. You want that thing to squat and just go. Now, obviously I have slicks on the car, but those are just tires to roll around. This will be a radial car. Same goes for the instant center. It's completely backwards for the two. So on a radial car, you want the long instant center to keep it out further. You know, if you can get it to the front wheels, great. 45, 50, 60 inches. It's going to help keep that separated as it's going down the track and keep the tire planted but the body separated, if that makes any sense. I'm not a professional in this subject. I've only read what I've read. So there are a ton of calculators online to do your anti-squat length and height. It's just all measuring your control arms. And you want to measure your control arms parallel to the axle. So you know your control arms are angled, right? You got your control arms angled, but you want to take like a carpenter's square and measure straight out and over to that bolt. That'll give you your actual measurements. You don't want to be off 1/8 of an inch. You can be off 4 inches up front, and you know, if you're trying to plot a suspension, that's a lot. Yeah, so instant center, anti-squat, instant center height. So that's another great thing about those lower control arm brackets is you can keep the car, there's a balance. If you want the car to be low, you gotta do stuff to the suspension to be able to make it work low. If you don't want it low, you don't have to work as hard. You won't have to change the brackets. But I think, you know, this much fucking wheel gap with your 275 sticking all out to here is ugly, and you know, let's just be honest. It's 2018. There's no reason for it. We have the tools. The parts are cheap. Get that thing down. Get the tires sucked in there. Get this thing squatting. Lower is faster. Faster is more aerodynamic. It's just how it works. Lower to the ground is better. Any sense of the word. I mean, just look at any drag car, any NASCAR, any F1 car, any of that. Okay, guys, you know the drill. It's been a while. You know, it went live a couple of times last week, but it's been a while since I've given you guys a video. I'm sorry. I've been super busy. I was on vacation. It was my birthday, and lacking motivation. Plus, I was also playing with my new TIG welder. I'm gonna try to get them going more and more here. Again, I want to try to get you guys at least one video a week. That dictates by my wallet. Anyways, grab a beer. Grab a cold one, grab a soda, grab a bottle of water, whatever the hell you grab it. Get out in the garage, working on your hot rod. If you have any questions, you know, let me know. Send me a message. You guys know the drill. Also, Brendan, I'm sorry, I can't remember the top of your name. I put your order in for the hat and everybody else. I'm working on a package deal right now to get a bunch of hats made up, and we'll see how that goes. And I'll let everybody know, but I just don't want to want you guys to think I forgot about you, especially Brandon. I will have that. Brandon, I can't remember right now. So give me a week or two to get everything situated. All right, guys. Have a great night.